Here's something fascinating. Psychologists have found that when human brains hear something repeated, it automatically assigns more importance to it, more weight, more meaning. The brain thinks that this must matter because it keeps coming back. Writers and speakers discovered this thousands of years ago and they built a technique around it. A technique so powerful that it has moved armies, changed nations, and created some of the most unforgettable lines in all of the human history. That technique has a name. It is called Anaphora. Before anything else, let us get the pronunciation right because this word trips a lot of people up. It is not anaphora, it is not anaphora, it is anaphora. The stress is on the second syllable neph. Say it with me, anaphora. Today we are going to cover everything you need to know about anaphora. We will look at where the word comes from, exactly what it means, what makes something a true anaphora and not just simple repetition, which is a distinction most students get wrong. And we will look at real examples from the most powerful speeches and literatures in the history. At the end, there's a Spot the Anaphora challenge. Your job is to find the repeated phrase. Let's begin. The word anaphora is ancient. It comes from Greek, a language that gave us hundreds of grammar terms we still use today. In Greek, ana means again or back, and phorein means to carry or to bring. So put them together and you get to carry back. And that is a perfect description of what this figure of speech does. It takes a word or phrase and carries it back to beginning, again and again. Think of anaphora like a drum beat in music. A drummer does not hit the drum once and stop. They hit it again and again in a pattern. That pattern is what creates the rhythm. That rhythm is what makes you feel something. Anaphora does the exactly same thing with the words. It repeats a phrase at the beginning of each line, and that pattern creates a rhythm that builds power and emotion with every single repetition. Anaphora is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is repeated at the beginning of successive clauses, sentences, or lines. In simple words, you take a word or phrase and repeat it at the start of two or more consecutive lines or sentences. That repetition at the beginning is what makes it anaphora. Now, three key features that every true anaphora must have. Feature 1. Position. The repeated phrase must always be at the beginning, not buried in the middle of a sentence, not tackled on at the end. Always the very first thing in each line or clause. This is what separates anaphora from other forms of repetition. The position is everything. Feature 2. Pattern. One repetition alone is not anaphora. If I say, we shall fight, just once, that is simply a sentence. But when Churchill said, we shall fight, we shall fight, we shall fight, 4 times in a row, that pattern is what created the power. Anaphora needs at least 2 repetitions in consecutive lines to establish the pattern. Without the pattern, there is no anaphora. Feature 3. And this is the one most students overlook. Purpose. Not all the repetition is anaphora. If I say, I went to the shop was closed, the shop was always closed on Sundays. The word shop repeats, but this is just natural speech. There's no emphasis, no emotional effect, no deliberate artistic choice. True anaphora is always intentional. The writer or speaker chose to repeat the phrase because the repetition itself creates something. Power, urgency, beauty, or emotion that a single statement could never achieve alone. Here's the formula and it's beautifully simple. For example, every day I wake up and try, every day I push through the pain, every day I get closer to my goal. The phrase every day is repeated at the beginning of each line. That is anaphora. Now, here is where anaphora comes alive. I want to take you to the most powerful real examples of anaphora in history. And as we go through each one, I want you to notice something. Notice how removing the repetition would make each example weaker. That is how you will know the anaphora is doing the job. August 28, 1963, Washington, D.C. Over a quarter of a million people have gathered at the Lincoln Memorial. The civil rights movement is at its peak. A 34-year-old Baptist minister from Atlanta, Georgia walks up to the podium, and what he says next will be remembered for as long as the English language exists. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and every mountain shall be made low. I have a dream today. Now imagine, he had said it only once. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, just once. Would anyone remember it 60 years later? Would it have moved a quarter of a million people to tears? No. It is the repetition, the anaphora, that hammered those words into history. Each time he said, I have a dream, the crowd felt it more deeply than the time before. And this is what anaphora does. It does not just repeat, it builds. Second example, June 4, 1940. Britain faces its darkest hour. The war in Europe is going badly. Prime Minister Winston Churchill stands before the House of Commons. He needs to do something almost impossible. He needs to make an exhausted and frightened nation believe they can survive. What he chooses to say and how he chooses to say it is a masterclass in the power of anaphora. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. We shall fight, repeated 4 times. Churchill didn't do this by accident. He knew that every repetition would feel like a hammer blow of resolve. By the time he reached, we shall never surrender, the audience had already been conditioned by the rhythm of his shell, and the final line landed with a devastating force. That is a speaker who understood anaphora completely. Third example, and this one comes from the literature. Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, published in 1959. This opening is considered one of the greatest in all of the English literature, and anaphora is the reason why. Listen carefully as I read it. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was 8 times. Dickens used anaphora here to immediately establish the central idea of the entire novel, that this was a time of contradictions, best and worst, wisdom and foolishness, light and darkness. The repetition of it was creates a hypnotic rhythm that pulls you into the story before you even realize what has happened. That is the craft of a master writer. Now, anaphora is not only found in great speeches and literature. It is also used in everyday English, in conversations, in advertising, and in music. This is one of the shortest anaphora, just 9 words. Julius Caesar reportedly sent a message to the Roman Senate after a swift military victory in the 47 BC. 3 words, 3 lines, 3 perfect repetitions. I came, I saw, I conquered. The word I represents the beginning of each short powerful clause. I came, I saw, I conquered. 9 words that have been remembered for over 2000 years, that is anaphora. As anaphora is not only for great historical moments, it is also used for everyday motivational speeches, in advertising, in music, and in ordinary conversations. For example, if you want peace, prepare for it. If you want success, work for it. If you want respect, earn it. Simple and relatable. If you want repetition, gives it a rhythm that a single sentence could never achieve. Now it's time for Spot the Anaphora challenge. Your job is to find the repeated phrases at the beginning of the lines. But I am warning you now. One of these is a trick. It looks like anaphora, but it's not. If you can spot which one is the trick, you truly understand anaphora. Pause each slide, find the repeated phrase, and then I will reveal it. Ready? Challenge 1. Read this passage from Winston Churchill. Find the anaphora. Pause now. Found it? We shall, appearing at the beginning of all the 4 lines. We shall not flee, we shall go on. We shall fight. We shall never surrender. 4 consecutive lines, same phrase at the start, deliberate empathetic building with every line, perfect anaphora. Challenge 2. This one is from Shakespeare. Shorter than the last one, but just as valid. Find the anaphora. Pause now. The repeated word is mad. It is at the beginning of each exclamation. Mad world, mad kings, mad composition. Just one word, but it repeats 3 times at the beginning of 3 consecutive exclamations. This shows something important. The repeated element in the anaphora does not have to be a long phrase. It can be a single word. As long as it is at the beginning, in a pattern and deliberate, it is anaphora. Challenge 3. This is an everyday motivational example. Find the anaphora. Pause now. Today I will is repeated at the beginning of all 3 lines. Today I will do, today I will think, today I will go. 3 consecutive lines having same phrases at the start, building momentum with each one. So it's the anaphora. Final challenge, and this is the trick one I warned you about. Read this carefully. This is anaphora. Yes or no? Pause and think hard. The answer is no. This is not anaphora, and here's why. Even though the word the appears at the beginning of all 3 lines, the alone is not a meaningful repeated phrase. It is simply the grammatical article that English requires before a noun. The sun, the children, the birds. These three are completely different subjects. There's no deliberate repetition here, no emphasis, no emotional effect, no pattern that was chosen for artistic purpose. Anaphora requires three things working together. The phrase must be at the beginning, it must repeat in a pattern, and that repetition must be a deliberate artistic choice that creates an effect. Remove we shall from the Churchill's speech and it loses its power completely. Remove the from these three sentences and nothing changes. That difference is everything. How many did you spot? Tell me your score in the comments. And if the trick question caught you out, don't worry at all. The distinction between natural repetition and true anaphora is something that even advanced English students get wrong. Now you know it, so you won't get it wrong again. Now, because of challenge 4, I want to address one of the most common mistakes students make about anaphora. What is the difference between anaphora and simple repetition? Simple repetition is when a word repeats naturally in language without any deliberate rhetorical intention. For example, I went to the market was busy. The word market repeats, but this is simply because we are talking about the same thing. There's no emphasis, no emotional effect, no deliberate artistic choice. There's a simple test you can apply to any passage to know whether it's a true anaphora or just natural repetition. Ask yourself this one question. If I removed the repeated phrase and replaced it with something different in each line, would the passage lose its power and impact? If yes, it is anaphora. The repetition is doing essential work here. If no, it is probably just natural grammatical repetition. Remember what we started with? The brain assigns more importance to the things that repeat. Now you understand exactly why anaphora has been used by the greatest speakers and writers in the history. When Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream" for the fourth time, every person in that crowd felt it more deeply than the first time. When Churchill said, "We shall fight" for the fourth time, every member of the parliament felt more resolute than when he started. The repetition was not redundancy, it was architecture. Each line was a building block, and anaphora was the design. Anaphora appears in political speeches, in literature, in advertising, in religious texts, and in everyday motivational language. Once you know what it is, you will hear it everywhere, in sermons, in songs, in TED Talks, in poetry. The greatest communicators in history all understood one thing. Say it once and people hear it. Say it with anaphora and people feel it. Let's do a final recap. Anaphora is the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive lines. It needs three things: position at the beginning, a pattern of at least two repetitions, and a deliberate purpose that creates an effect. It is different from simple repetition because true anaphora always creates something, be it power, emotion, or beauty, that would be lost without it. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up. Can you think of a euphemism you use in everyday life? Drop it in the comments. I will reply to everyone. Subscribe if you have not already because we are covering every single figure of speech one by one. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Keep learning and keep growing.